Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the Coal Seam. I'm Chris Hamilton and I'll be your host for the next half hour. We have a very special guest with us today, Governor Earl Ray Tomblin. Governor, thanks so much for taking time to join us again back on the program.
Well, I'm pleased to be here, Chris.
Why don't we just start out by reflecting on your State of the State address last week. I know you emphasized economic developments, plans to revitalize and improve our education system, and also ways to make government more efficient. And those are obviously plausible goals, and
Right.
and perhaps if we could just start out and maybe expand on those a little bit.
Sure. Let's first talk about West Virginia's financial stability. We're one of only about 4 states in the country that ended up with a surplus in our budget this past year. We got so many states all around us, including our neighbor in Ohio, who started their year with a $10 billion deficit. And that's one of those things that we're very proud of in West Virginia, that we've been able to manage our finances in West Virginia very frugally, and the fact that I did not have to propose any tax increases in West Virginia. That's probably about 16 years in a row that has happened, and we've been able to really to maintain and work within our budget in the state of West Virginia. Obviously, education is very important in West Virginia. If we're going to have economic development, we've got to have a good educated workforce. And it's not only starting with K through 12, but we've got to really instill in our children, probably starting in the middle school, about the possibility of getting education beyond the 12th grade, whether it be at a 4-year institution, whether it be at one of our community and technical colleges or a trade school. We've got to get that mindset that these children do have to go on to school to be able to have the kind of educated workforce to be able to provide for their families. And I think that's just so important. It's got to be the keystone of our workforce in West Virginia. Obviously, the third thing is economic development. Jobs is the most important thing on everyone's mind. We've had so much high unemployment around the country during this recession, and to be able to promote West Virginia. And I think because of our financial condition, we're better able to promote it than we have been in the past. And one of the things I've been very proud of is the fact that we were able to land the Macy's Fulfillment Center in our Eastern Panhandle, creating about 1,200 new jobs.
That's a lot of jobs. That's a bigger economic boost than most people realize. We'll come back to that just in a moment, but you mentioned the state's finances and
Right.
how much better we are today than some of our neighboring states. And I know that you had some experiences within the legislative body as chairing the Senate Finance Committee,
Right.
and also know that people around the state give you a lot of credit for perhaps knowing more about the state's finances and having worked directly with our last 2 or 3 governors to just absolutely insist that the state pay its bills and that the state pay down some of its long-term debt.
Absolutely, especially our retirement programs were one of the worst, especially our teachers, one of the worst in the country. And we made a conscious decision that we are going to address this problem. The liability did not occur overnight, and we couldn't be expected to fix it overnight. However, we did put ourselves on a 40-year payout plan. We have never missed one of those payments through good times and bad times. And because of that, because of the privatization of our workers' compensation system, because of our rainy day fund, those are the things that the Wall Street rating agencies look at. And only recently, Moody's upgraded West Virginia to a AA1, which is one step away from their highest rating. And that's the best rating we've had for over 25 years in this state. And that means millions of dollars in savings in the taxpayers' money out there. So those are the kind of things that we've been able to do responsibly as far as our state finances go. And I think it's really starting to shine through now when businesses look for a place to open a new business or expand. They've really got West Virginia on their radar screen because they realize that they're not going to be hit with a huge tax increase in the next year or 2 years down the road.
Well, I also know, just being around the Capitol here quite a bit myself, that that type of discipline to pay down your bills and pay down your debt doesn't come without a lot of pain in that transition, because just the way people were accustomed to spending money somewhat frivolously
Right.
But today there's just a lot more discipline, seems like, that everyone shares.
Absolutely. There's lots of needs out there, and lots of programs programs that would like to have more money coming in. But when you got huge debt the way we did here in West Virginia, somebody has to take it seriously, and we did that. And we decided the surpluses that we had over the past 8 or 9 years that we were going to take that because we knew it was not going to last forever, and pay down our bills. It's almost like if you get a little extra money, paying down the mortgage on your home.
Mm-hmm.
That way, in the years, outstanding years, you either pay less or you get it paid off sooner.
Well, you mentioned Macy's, and I'm sure there's other opportunities like that, but when you think of a corporation like Macy's, they could have easily selected a number of other states within the nucleus of their operating region.
Absolutely. They looked at 157 sites around the country, and it came down to New York and West Virginia. And of course, when you think of Macy's, you normally think of New York, and we were
Macy's Day Parade.
Absolutely, Macy's Day Parade. But at the end of the day, they chose West Virginia because of our financial stability here, and that's something I think we can be proud of, and continue to build on to attract other businesses and new jobs to the state of West Virginia.
Again, the three objectives that were embodied within your state of the state, at least the three principal ones that I noted: education, economic development, and generally making more state government more responsive, more efficient.
Right.
How do you see? What's your vision 5, 7 years from now when those objectives really converge and develop more so than what they are today?
My vision would be that our people would have a world-class education, number one, that we will be able to attract new businesses to West Virginia. We've been able to make West Virginia a lot more business-friendly than it used to be. We're lowering our corporate net income tax from 8.5 to 6.5%. We're continuing. We're going to phase out the business franchise tax. We're lowering the sales tax on food. The previous administration had lowered it by 3% over a 3-year period. I'm proposing we lower it 1 more cent this year. It's something that we can financially stand this year. It's a regressive tax. It'll help our senior citizens and our young people, all working people, put about $25 million back in their pockets. But what I look for down the road, a good educated workforce, good jobs, good paid jobs with benefits, so our people can stay in West Virginia or come back home to West Virginia and be with their families. That's what West Virginia is about, being close to their families, the people they love, and that's what I would like to see.
I think you could put a caption on that: West Virginia first.
Right,
and,
absolutely.
That seems to fit well with those objectives. I know you've been a champion of educational programs within the state. I know you're a graduate of both West Virginia and Marshall,
Right.
and support both schools equally. And I also know you're a strong proponent of having that strong technical and local college activity as well. But I also know that you've been a champion of mine safety, environmental quality programs over
Right.
the years. Again, having been the chair of the legislative committee on energy industry and mining, we've worked on a number of those initiatives. You had some strong, fairly strong remarks, very supportive remarks about the role that coal plays in our energy industries in West Virginia's economy. And we certainly appreciate that. Like to think we're part of that economic engine. Do you care to elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. We in West Virginia have been blessed with our natural resources, especially our energy. Our coal, our natural gas, and oil in West Virginia have all been very good to us over the years. And those have been kind of the backbone of our economy in West Virginia, and I think they will continue to be the backbone of our economy for several years to come. A few years back, we passed our energy portfolio bill that says basically by 2025, at least 25% of our energy would come from renewable or alternative fuel sources. And we're really moving toward that. Obviously, we do have the wind power, we have solar power, we have a new plant coming on board in southern West Virginia to change coal to fuel or gasoline. And there's a lot of technology that's being developed right now. However, those naysayers for coal you know, I don't agree with them, because I think that we're going to be burning coal not only in West Virginia but in this country for the next 20 years or so, because there's no other affordable fuel source right now. Obviously, we in West Virginia would like to continue to mine coal. We'd like to do it in an environmentally friendly way, and we'd like to play with the rules that the EPA lays down for us. However, we've been having the problems in Washington, where all of a sudden the rules are either not there, they're changing daily, and to have the EPA to come back and revoke a permit that it took 10 years to secure, and that's by doing everything that the agencies had said. You know, I think it's just completely wrong for a government agency to do that. I think if they tell West Virginians, this is how you got to mine coal, we'll mine coal in that way, and we want to do it in the right way in order to keep the jobs that we got and keep our environment clean in West Virginia.
Well, that's one of the things that made the actions of EPA last year appear to be so arbitrary. They would never provide the clear guidance on what their rules or what their requirements were, and how you go about incorporating those standards within a new mining plan. I know we spent the biggest part of the year, and there's even some litigation that the state's involved with. But when you really think of what's happened here with the Spruce permit, a mine that has undergone perhaps the greatest scrutiny, you know, almost 10 years of review, and an unprecedented EIS was done that gave rise to that mine operating. Plus, a number of changes have been made over the years before the permit was ever approved, and these were changes recommended by EPA. So all the changes were made early on. The mine now has been in actual operation. I don't think a lot of people understand that. This is a mine that is operating today, producing coal, 80 people or so employed there. And then for EPA just to, you know, say, we don't think this mine should continue. Yeah,
it's my understanding this is the first revocation of a permit for a mine site in the entire country. And you got to you know, look back also, there's investors there. They've put hundreds of millions of dollars trying to meet all the requirements that was laid out before them at the time, and they did that. And so, you know, once this permit is revoked, those people are, I guess they're just out in the cold. But I just think, you know, I've told my colleagues from around the country, I said, you know, today, you know, the EPA is looking at coal mining in West Virginia. It could be your chemical plant or manufacturing plant in your state. The same thing could happen to you. So I think that they're starting to realize that, hey, maybe EPA is overstepping its bounds somewhat by what they've done here in West Virginia.
Well, we don't know. We don't know if you know, this is the first of several others, or whether there's other mines that they're looking at where they may very well impose similar you know, sanctions or actions towards a veto. But it's clearly caused everyone to rally together. And speaking of a rally, I know you brought all segments of the industry and organized labor together last week here at the Capitol, and I think over 1,100 people turned up to voice their support and to stand shoulder to shoulder with one another to one, appreciate your efforts, and to secondarily commit to do whatever they need to do to you know, maintain the solidarity and in hopes of trying to convince EPA to reverse or reconsider its action.
Right. Well, that whole rally was about jobs. I mean, it's not only the mine operators, but a lot of coal miners. A great number of the people there were coal miners, and their families. They're concerned that they may not have a job in 3 months, 6 months, or 2 years down the road. And it causes them a great deal of consternation. They know that they got children to, you know, to educate, to send to college, to buy food for. And you know, when you talk about coal mining jobs today, you're not talking about, you know, the very small salaries. You're talking about very good paying jobs, something that they're using to buy their homes, to provide the shelter, the food, the education for their families out there. So really what you're talking about is people's lives. And I think sometimes you may have bureaucrats who make a decision without ever thinking of the human effect of what their decisions are doing to people.
Well, I think that, you know, capsulizes our concerns, you know, as well. Post-mine land development. I know several years ago you championed legislation and just had an interest that which you communicated to us that in the industry that you wanted to see some things left behind once mining was exhausted in a certain area. So it led to a whole new initiative on post-mine land development, where during the course of the planning for the coal mining operation, the legislation suggested that they also have an eye towards some recreational, industrial, or commercial use for that property once the mining was completed, and I think that's been very successful here the last couple of years.
Well, it has been. I would like to see more of the mountaintop sites used for development in certain parts of the state, especially in southern West Virginia, where there is very little flat land. We have people living right along the creek beds and the rivers. Every year they're flooded out, and we spend between FEMA and the state millions of dollars every year. And I think that we could take these sites, we could make some good home sites, residential developments there with green spaces, with sports fields and so forth for our young people, and get them up out of the floodplains. And I think that that's one of those things. The infrastructure most of the time is already in place. We need places to diversify our economy. We need to be able to put a plant or a large facility in, and these are perfect places. And rather than just build them back and make it another mountain there, let's use the land that's already been excavated, that already has the infrastructure in place. And it makes no sense to me to just let that land sit there with no use for it.
I know we have a lot of, I think you're absolutely on point with that, and I know we have a lot of trail riding underway, the Hatfield McCoy Trail System in the state, and I'm just amazed when I talk to people over in commerce and tourism, how many people visit that, and the type of economic development that trail in of itself, with bed and breakfast facilities and little maintenance shops and sales of some of the equipment. It's just a phenomenal number of people to come from all over the country and to ride that trail, and that's the lion's share of that trail is on post-mine lands.
Right. It's been a huge success for tourism in West Virginia. It's a sport or an activity that can be enjoyed year-round. It's each year the number of people coming in, the number of tourists is increasing by the thousands, and we have plenty of land to do that on. It's one of the best trails east of the Mississippi, and as you have said, it's created just hundreds and hundreds of jobs, whether it be most of it in the hospitality industry, but obviously food stores, repair shops, rental outfitters to provide the ATVs and so forth. It's a whole array of a new economy, especially in southern West Virginia, and it's one there was a lot of doubts about, but as you say, most of that is on mining lands where the riding takes place.
And it's not just trails. I looked at a recent catalog of post-mine land developments in the state, and it shows things like the FBI Center in Clarksburg, the whole Milan Park, which is a major industrial and recreational soccer fields everywhere up just within 2 miles of Mountaineer Field in Morgantown. The Cabela's site up in Ohio, Marshall County region is on former mine lands, and there's jails. There's the Hardwood Park in Mingo County. There's a new airport and school going in, I believe, in Mingo as well.
Absolutely. There's the airport in Logan. There's the new recreation center, the new conference center at Chief Logan State Park. All those were previous mine sites, the regional jail, and so there is a need for the flat land in southern West Virginia, and we just need to take advantage of that opportunity. It's land that could be developed very inexpensively, and I think we need to continue to be able to use that land wherever there's a need.
I'm reminded that I believe your Division of Commerce, the Coalfield Economic Development group there, the Office of Coalfield Development, they just a couple weeks ago, I believe, released a survey that showed some 14,000 jobs are on these facilities all told around the state. So that's major economic development.
Absolutely. And once again, it's affordable land, and it's land that's already been excavated. It's ready basically to build on with minor excavation to finish it off.
That's always been a pet peeve of the industries because, you know, heretofore, one of the requirements of, you know, when you put a mine in and you're developing a reserve, you put a road in, you put utilities,
Right.
typically facilities to accommodate that mining operation, several buildings. And one of the first things that the reclamation law used to require was for you to come back and knock all that down,
Right.
remove the road, remove the
Yeah.
power.
Which makes no sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever. It only makes sense while the mining company's in there with that large equipment to, you know, to configure the land and to set up the utilities and roads to accommodate something afterwards.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with that.
And we appreciate all your support over the years and insisting that and working with us to come up with those programs and make that all possible. And as you say, we're getting better at it and need to become even more proficient with it in the future.
Absolutely.
We see ourselves as within the industry as somewhat of a bridge to the future. You know, there's a lot of talk about, not a lot of talk about post-coal future that would you know, include all of your renewables. But there's some talk of that. But I think everyone also realizes that coal is a finite resource, and whether it's 20 years or 50 years, you know, the day's going to come when we begin to exhaust a large portion of our reserve base, and have to turn to other energy sources at that time. So we see ourselves as somewhat of a bridge towards economic diversification, and, you know, provides at least a blueprint of getting us there or achieving the same type of economic impacts we get from the industry today.
Right. Well, I think that we're serious in West Virginia. I think there's a lot of very smart people out there looking at ways to where we can burn coal in a cleaner manner than we have in the past. Obviously, we're very fortunate in West Virginia to recently come up on the Marcellus Shale, which is another alternative source of fuel. It's another source of wealth for the state of West Virginia. So, yeah, we're constantly looking at different ways. In the Marcellus Shale, one of the things that I'm very excited about is the byproducts there, which could very well stimulate our manufacturing industry again in the state of West Virginia.
Absolutely. I think one of the you know, biggest costs related to the manufacturing of goods is your base energy costs, and if you can provide that you know, from a nearby source and eliminate some of the transportation costs involved, it, you know, makes it all that more feasible. We're still a major exporter of coal, so we're very concerned and very much interested in what those the regions that some of that coal goes to. You know, some of their issues as well. You know, we ship coal, I think it's 25 other states and about the same number of foreign destinations. And the coal production's been down a little bit in the last couple of years, and it's been primarily due to the moratorium. Now, they don't like to call it a moratorium, but it's clearly a de facto moratorium on new mining permits. There's just been a couple approved here over the past 18 months, and we hope that changes going forward, because the national recession that we've just experienced, we're showing a lot of signs of coming out of that recession. We're making things again, we're producing steel, and West Virginia stands to lose some of that market created by the recovery. By the fact that we're losing mining permits, losing mining operations. We're down about 25 million tons here over the last 2 years.
I think a lot of people do not understand that mining is not something you decide to go into in next week or next month, but it takes several years to get a mine permitted, to have the investors and so forth there, but to get through all the environmental loops out there and that you got to go through, and I think that's one of those things that, you know, maybe you could talk just a little bit about it. I mean, it's one of those things that, and when the EPA is not issuing those permits. Basically, it may take us 2 years to catch up to get that same mine permitted in the state.
It does, and that's one of the things that concerns us, because we do have production that's off a little bit right now, but yet the prices remain fairly strong.
Right.
And in some cases of the real high grade metallurgical coal that is exported abroad, that's carrying a fairly high price today on a per ton basis. So while production has dropped off 21 million tons over the last 2 years, the prices have remained strong or even crept upwards a little bit.
Right.
So it's created somewhat of a false sense for the state coffers, at
Right.
least, and the state budget analysts, that things are still okay.
Sure.
But if that pricing drops, the state could really experience a deficit in some of the revenues that currently that come from coal. So.
Absolutely. And obviously, we know in West Virginia we got to be competitive with our other states also, and obviously the Western coal is cheaper to produce and so forth. However, we're blessed here in West Virginia that we have some of the higher quality coal with higher BTUs, I think, in most cases. But once again, we've always got to be cognizant of what our neighbors in Kentucky are doing, what they're doing in Illinois to be
They certainly do.
competitive.
Those are friends of ours, allies on a lot of issues, but they're also competitors.
Absolutely.
Particularly the Illinois basin today.
Right. Yeah.
So, Governor, I know that there's been some issues surrounding a special election next year. Would you
Sure.
like to comment on that? I know I've heard you say that you want the people involved in that process, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just for a little bit of background here, after Governor Manchin at the time was elected to U.S. Senate, he resigned on November the 15th. The Constitution, it was very clear that the Senate President then acts as governor, and under the statute at the time, it said that the replacement or the new election would be in 2012. Well, there was obviously a lawsuit filed, and the Supreme Court ruled a week or so ago that said that that part of the statute was unconstitutional. There should be an election this year in 2011. And I've always said whatever the Supreme Court said, that's what we would follow. So I'm working with the Secretary of State and others in order to get the timelines where our veterans, our overseas residents, and so forth.
Well, that's important, having the veterans vote.
Absolutely. The veterans, they're fighting for our country, and it should be a timeline where they make sure that their voice for their governor is heard. So I did the proclamation as ordered by the Supreme Court and set the election date for October the 4th this year, 2011. And then I've also requested that the legislature pass a bill to allow the people in the state to vote in the primary to nominate their governor. The current code says there's to be a convention. However, there's very few people involved. The people who are registered independent would not be able to participate. Our veterans